The mask of friendship cracks not in words, but in the twitch of an eye and the stiffness of a hand. Carl Jung. Have you ever sat across from someone who smiled politely, said all the right words, and yet something inside you felt unsettled, as if beneath their kindness there was an undercurrent of bitterness quietly directed toward you? Carl Jung believed these instincts are never random. When you sense this dissonance, it is often your unconscious detecting the signs of hidden hostility, the truth behind the mask. In this video, I will share with you 5 subtle signs that someone close to you may secretly hate you. This is not an invitation to mistrust everyone, but rather a guide to seeing more clearly the energies around you. The Jungian philosophy here is simple but profound. Every person carries 2 faces. One is the persona, the social mask we wear to be accepted. The other is the shadow, the darker side filled with envy, resentment, or denied emotions. When someone secretly dislikes you, their persona may continue to smile, but their shadow will leak out through cracks. A sarcastic remark, a cold silence, a gesture that seems too sharp to be accidental. As Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." If you don't recognize the shadow in your relationships, you risk becoming a victim of it. Before we begin, I invite you to like this video, subscribe to my channel, Jungian Mind Shift, and turn on the notification bell. That way, you can continue this journey with me into the deeper layers of human psychology. So, what are these signs? Let's begin with the first sign, and it may be closer to home than you imagine. Sign number 1. Contempt, disguised as irony. There are few things more confusing than laughter that carries a sting. On the surface, it looks like playfulness, yet deep inside, it unsettles you. This is what happens when someone uses sarcasm or biting humor as a mask for contempt. They belittle you in front of others, frame it as wit, and when you show discomfort, they retreat behind the shield of irony with phrases like, "Don't take it so seriously," or "I was just joking." The moment is brushed away with laughter, yet a trace of poison remains. Why is this important in recognizing hidden hatred? Because irony is often the safest way for hostility to escape the unconscious. Most people do not want to openly declare their dislike, especially if you are family, a colleague, or part of their social circle. Their persona, the social mask Jung described, demands politeness. Yet the shadow, filled with envy or resentment, refuses to stay silent forever. It slips through the cracks, wrapped in humor so it appears harmless. Carl Jung uncovered the psychological roots of this behavior in his word association experiments. He would give patients a list of words, father, betrayal, love, death, and ask them to respond instantly with the first word that came to mind. What fascinated him was not only the answers, but the hesitations, the nervous chuckles, the moments when someone laughed as if to soften the tension. These reactions revealed conflicts buried deep in the unconscious. When a word touched a nerve, the persona could not respond smoothly. Instead, irony or nervous humor appeared, protecting the person from admitting what they truly felt. This is the same mechanism at work when someone constantly makes sarcastic jokes at your expense. Their unconscious may be carrying jealousy, anger, or contempt. They cannot allow these feelings to surface directly because it would threaten the relationship or expose their shadow. So they disarm the aggression with irony, turning the dagger of hostility into a feather of comedy. Yet, to the person on the receiving end, the cut is still felt. The psychological danger of ignoring this sign is profound. If you dismiss sarcastic remarks as harmless, you may slowly absorb them into your own self-image. Over time, you might find yourself hesitating before sharing good news, doubting whether your joy will be respected or ridiculed. You may even laugh along with the joke against yourself, reinforcing the belittling pattern. Jung warned that the psyche is vulnerable to repetition. What is repeated often enough begins to shape the way we see ourselves. A steady drip of contempt, even wrapped in humor, can hollow out self-confidence. There is also a risk of complicity. By tolerating or excusing the sarcasm, you allow the shadow of another to cast a shadow over you. The relationship becomes unbalanced. One person asserts power through irony, the other absorbs the wound in silence. This is how toxic dynamics take root, not through grand betrayals, but through small, repeated acts of disguised hostility. The Jungian way to respond begins with consciousness. You must first name what is happening. This is not a joke. This is contempt wearing a mask. Keep a journal and record when these moments occur. Notice how you feel in your body. Do you tense your shoulders? Does your stomach tighten? These physical reactions are signals from the unconscious, urging you to pay attention. From awareness, you can move to boundaries. The next time a sarcastic remark is thrown out, do not laugh it off. You do not need to respond with anger, but you can calmly state, "I know you were joking, but I do not find that funny." This act removes the shield of irony. It forces the other person to confront the fact that their humor carries weight. Sometimes this may change their behavior. Sometimes it will not. But in either case, you have protected your dignity. Finally, reflect inward. Jung believed that when we notice patterns of hostility around us, it is also an opportunity to examine our own shadow. Ask yourself, why do I remain close to people who treat me this way? Is there a part of me that fears setting boundaries? Am I afraid of being alone if I stop pleasing others? These questions, though difficult, lead toward individuation, the process of uniting light and darkness within, so we are no longer controlled by unconscious fears. In the end, sarcasm that wounds is never just a joke. It is the shadow speaking in disguise. By learning to see through the mask of irony, you reclaim your clarity. And once you see it clearly, you can no longer be deceived. You step away from relationships that corrode your spirit and move toward those where humor uplifts rather than diminishes. Now that we have uncovered the first sign, let us turn to the second, one that hides not in laughter, but in silence, and yet can be just as revealing. Sign number 2, hidden sabotage. One of the most troubling signs of secret hostility is not open conflict, but the quiet ways someone close to you repeatedly undermines your progress. It rarely appears as open betrayal. Instead, it takes the form of small mistakes, misleading advice, or absence at critical moments. These subtle acts are easy to overlook once or twice, yet when the pattern repeats, it reveals more than coincidence. It reveals a will, often unconscious, that does not want to see you succeed. Criminal psychology offers an even starker lens. In forensic interviews with offenders who sabotaged others in professional or personal contexts, investigators found a recurring theme. Many offenders framed their actions as accidents or as tests of loyalty. They often insisted they never meant harm, yet their timing revealed otherwise. The deeper analysis showed that these individuals were driven by envy and resentment that they could not acknowledge consciously. The mistakes were expressions of the shadow, a hidden aggression that chose critical moments to reveal itself. Carl Jung would have recognized this perfectly. The persona of the saboteur insists on innocence. I was only trying to help. But the shadow, which resents your growth or fears your independence, cannot remain silent. It leaks into behavior. The unconscious chooses its timing carefully, striking not when everything is calm, but when you are vulnerable and the stakes are high. Jung wrote that the unconscious always seeks expression, and when denied, it emerges through symptoms, slips, and actions that betray the truth. The danger of ignoring this sign is profound. If you keep excusing repeated sabotage, you may start to internalize the sense that you cannot trust your own judgment. You begin to hesitate before sharing your plans, doubting whether you will receive real support or another disguised obstacle. Over time, this weakens your confidence more effectively than outright hostility. Open conflict can be confronted. Hidden sabotage slowly erodes trust from within, leaving you isolated and uncertain. The path forward is not paranoia, but consciousness. First, notice the timing. Are the mistakes happening at random, or do they appear precisely when you're on the verge of progress? Second, seek perspective. Compare the advice you receive with insights from neutral sources. If one person's counsel repeatedly misguides you, it is no longer guidance. It is interference. Third, reclaim your agency. You can politely decline offers of help, saying, "I appreciate your willingness, but I will manage this myself." In doing so, you reduce opportunities for sabotage without creating unnecessary conflict. Hidden sabotage is one of the most insidious forms of secret hatred because it masquerades as support. It erodes not through open attack, but through a slow drip of obstacles, each one explained away as accidental. Once you see the pattern, you are no longer its victim. You become free to surround yourself with people whose presence strengthens rather than weakens you. And now I want to ask you directly. Have you ever noticed someone in your life whose mistakes or advice always seem to hold you back at critical moments? Do you think it was truly accidental, or was it the shadow speaking through them?
Sign number 3. Silent competition. According to Carl Jung, the most exhausting sign that someone secretly dislikes you is silent competition. This is not the friendly kind of rivalry that motivates both people to grow. It is the hidden, unspoken contest where someone close to you constantly tries to outdo you, downplay your success, or shift the attention back to themselves. At first, it may look like ambition. In truth, it is often resentment dressed as motivation. Picture this scene. You share that you have started walking every morning to improve your health. Instead of celebrating, a friend quickly adds, "That's good, but I've been running 5 miles every day for years." Or you mention that your daughter just graduated, and a neighbor immediately interrupts with an even longer story about their son's achievements. In these moments, your joy is quietly stolen. What should have been a point of connection becomes a stage for comparison. You are not seen for your accomplishment. You are reduced to a marker for someone else's superiority. Psychological research has shown how common this dynamic is. In a large survey on workplace relationships by Gallup, nearly 60% of employees admitted they had colleagues who minimized their achievements in order to highlight their own. These acts were not overt hostility, but subtle maneuvers, repeated until the environment became quietly toxic. Another study in social psychology revealed that people with high levels of envy often masked it through constant comparison. They were quick to highlight their own successes when others shared theirs, and equally quick to minimize the victories of those they secretly resented. Carl Jung helps us see why this happens. The persona of the silent competitor may look polished and supportive. They may even say, "I'm so happy for you." But their shadow is whispering another truth. Deep down, your success activates their own feelings of inadequacy. Instead of facing those feelings, they project them outward. They compete with you, not because they want to grow, but because they cannot tolerate being reminded of what they lack. Silent competition is therefore not really about you. It is about their struggle with their own shadow. Yet if you ignore this sign, the consequences are real. Being constantly compared or outshone erodes the natural joy of your own progress. You may start to question whether your accomplishments are worth sharing. Over time, you may even minimize yourself, keeping quiet about good news because you know it will only invite someone else to steal the spotlight. This is how secret hatred operates, not by direct confrontation, but by slowly silencing you until your victories feel hollow. There is also another danger. If you are naturally generous, you may unconsciously start to play small in order to keep the peace. Jung would call this living in the persona. You hide parts of yourself because you fear rejection. But what is lost is authenticity. When you dim your light for the comfort of others, you betray not only your growth, but your individuation, the very process of becoming who you truly are. So, how do you handle silent competition? The first step is awareness. Notice the patterns. Do certain people always respond to your joy with a story of their own? Do they redirect attention whenever you are acknowledged? These are not isolated moments, they are signals. Second, do not diminish yourself. Share your successes without apology. If others cannot celebrate you, that reveals their shadow, not your flaw. Third, choose where to invest your energy. True friends feel joy at your joy. They expand with you, not against you. You can also use this as an opportunity for self-reflection. Ask yourself, have I ever done the same to someone else? We all carry envy in our shadow. The difference lies in whether we project it outward or integrate it inward. Jung taught that by confronting our envy honestly, we transform it into a guide. Instead of competing, we can ask, what does this envy show me about what I long for? In this way, even the pain of silent competition can become a mirror for growth. Silent competition is a quiet thief. It steals not by attacking directly, but by replacing celebration with comparison. When you see it clearly, you are no longer its victim. You reclaim the joy of your own path, knowing that true connection does not require you to shrink. It requires you to stand fully in your light. And this brings us to the next sign, which is even more subtle. It hides not in jokes or competition, but in the absence of presence itself, the deliberate silence, the withdrawal of warmth, and the avoidance that speaks louder than words ever could.
Sign number 4. Control disguised as care. There is a kind of hostility that does not shout or compete. Instead, it wraps itself in the gentle tone of care. This is when someone constantly gives you advice or criticism that seems protective on the surface, but in reality makes you insecure and dependent. They say they are only worried about you. They claim to want the best for you. Yet strangely, the more you listen to them, the less capable you feel of standing on your own. This is not true care. This is control disguised as concern. Consider the example of a parent who tells their adult child, "I just want you to be safe. That's why I don't think you should try that new job. It's risky, and I don't want you to fail." On the surface, the words sound loving, but beneath them lies a message. You cannot be trusted with your own decisions. Or think of a partner who often says, "I'm only saying this because I care, but you really don't look good when you dress like that." The words appear protective. In truth, they plant seeds of insecurity. What should be a relationship of support slowly becomes a web of dependency. Carl Jung helps us understand why this happens. People who feel insecure in themselves often attempt to secure power in relationships by controlling others. Their persona says, "I am caring, I'm protective," but their shadow whispers, "I cannot let you grow, because if you grow, you may outgrow me." By cloaking control in the language of concern, they avoid confronting their own fear of abandonment or inadequacy. The danger of ignoring this sign is profound. When you allow someone to constantly guide your choices, you lose touch with your own inner compass. You begin to second-guess every decision. Should I take that job? Should I speak up in a meeting? Should I wear that outfit? Over time, your confidence shrinks. Jung warned that when we give away our power to another's persona, we abandon our own individuation. We stop becoming who we are, and instead live in the image someone else has crafted for us. The path forward begins with discernment. Not every piece of advice is control, but you can ask yourself, does this comment empower me, or does it make me smaller? True care supports your growth, even if it involves risk. False care uses fear to keep you dependent. When you notice repeated criticism that erodes rather than strengthens you, recognize it as a projection of the other person's shadow. The next step is boundary setting. You can respond gently yet firmly. "I appreciate your concern, but this is a choice I need to make for myself." By speaking this way, you break the spell of dependency. You remind both yourself and the other that your life is your own. Journaling can also help here. Write down the advice you are given, then reflect. Did this comment give me confidence, or did it make me afraid? Over time, the pattern becomes undeniable. Control disguised as care is one of the most dangerous forms of hidden hostility because it feels safe at first. But safety that suffocates is not love. It is scary wearing a mask. Once you learn to see through it, you reclaim not only your independence, but also the dignity of guiding your own life.
Sign number 5. Spreading criticism and gossip. Have you ever discovered that someone close to you has been speaking negatively about you when you were not in the room? Perhaps a colleague shared that a friend had been questioning your abilities at work. Or you noticed that certain people treat you differently, only to later realize that gossip has been shaping their perception of you. Few things cut as deeply as betrayal through words spoken behind your back. It is a form of hidden hatred that destroys trust without ever confronting you directly. From a psychological perspective, gossip is rarely innocent. Social psychologists have shown that gossip often functions as a form of social control. In classic studies of group dynamics, researchers observed that individuals used gossip to lower the reputation of those they perceived as rivals. By spreading criticism, they subtly shifted the balance of power in their favor. What looks like casual chatter is often an unconscious strategy to weaken someone else's position. In criminal psychology, this behavior has also been analyzed. Forensic experts studying cases of group hostility noticed that before open aggression appears, there is often a stage of covert hostility expressed through rumors. In gang conflicts, for example, members frequently described how stories were spread about betrayal or weakness before any direct confrontation occurred. The pattern reveals a universal truth. The shadow often begins its attack not with violence, but with whispers. Carl Jung would explain gossip as projection at work. A person who gossips projects their own flaws or insecurities onto another. If they feel inadequate, they may accuse you of arrogance. If they feel jealous, they may label you selfish. By placing these unwanted traits onto you, they protect their persona, the mask of being kind, loyal, or supportive, while letting their shadow attack indirectly. Jung once wrote that what irritates us most in others is often a reflection of something unacknowledged within ourselves. Gossip is a perfect example of this law in action. The danger of ignoring this sign is serious. When gossip goes unchallenged, it begins to shape the way others see you. Reputations are fragile. Once damaged, even unfairly, they can take years to rebuild. More importantly, gossip corrodes the foundation of intimacy. To know that someone you trusted uses your absence as an opportunity to wound you is to realize that the relationship rests on deception, not loyalty. There is also an inner risk. Repeated exposure to gossip can create self-doubt. If enough voices echo the same criticism, even falsely, the psyche begins to absorb it. You may start to question your worth, wondering whether you have failed in ways you never noticed. Jung warned that the collective unconscious exerts powerful influence over the individual. When negative stories about you circulate within a group, the weight of collective opinion can distort your self-perception unless you consciously resist. So, how should you respond? First, do not chase every rumor. That only feeds the shadow of the gossiper. Instead, focus on living with integrity so that those who know you well can see the truth. Second, be willing to confront when necessary. A calm and direct statement, "I have heard you said this about me. If it is true, I would rather hear it from you," removes the safety of anonymity. Gossip thrives in the dark. Confrontation brings it into the light. And finally, choose carefully where to place your trust. If someone repeatedly gossips about others in front of you, it is only a matter of time before they gossip about you. Jung believed that individuation requires us to step away from relationships poisoned by unconscious hostility and into circles where authenticity is possible. Gossip and hidden criticism are not minor flaws. They are signs that a person's shadow is using your reputation as its battlefield. Once you recognize this, you no longer allow your dignity to be shaped by whispers. You become the author of your own story rather than the victim of another's unspoken envy. We have traveled through the hidden corridors of human behavior, uncovering the subtle signs that reveal when someone close to you secretly harbors dislike. From sarcasm disguised as humor, to sabotage hidden as help, to silent competition, control wrapped in concern, and gossip whispered behind your back, each sign is a glimpse into the shadow. Carl Jung reminded us that what we resist persists. When people refuse to confront their inner darkness, that darkness often leaks out onto others. If we are not aware, we absorb it, carrying the weight of another's shadow as if it were our own. But when we recognize the signs, we reclaim our clarity. We learn that not every smile hides goodwill, and not every word of advice is spoken in love. If today's exploration resonated with you, I invite you to support Jungian Mindshift. Please like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into psychology, philosophy, and the wisdom of Carl Jung. Until then, remember, the more conscious you become of the shadows around you, the more light you bring into your own life.